I'm Nate, 34 years old, and if there's one thing I've learned about family reunions, it's this. They're less about catching up and more about subtle jabs dressed as small talk. It had been nearly 5 years since I'd last shown up to one, not out of bitterness, but because life had a way of getting full. I'd moved states, started my own tech company, and spent most of my time grinding behind the scenes. No flashy social media posts, no family group chats, just focus. The last time I attended a reunion, I was still job hunting and couch surfing, so I guess the version of me they remembered was stuck in that awkward still figuring it out phase. And apparently, they never updated that image. So when I got the invite this year, handwritten, no less, from my Aunt Marie, I hesitated. I stared at it for days on my kitchen counter, sipping stale coffee and flipping it over like the answer was hidden in the ink. Part of me wanted to toss it, but the other part, the quieter, more stubborn part, wanted to see them. Not to prove anything. At least, that's what I told myself. But maybe just to see if anything had changed. The reunion was held at a fancy countryside estate just outside of town. One of those places with gravel paths, linen-covered tables under white tents, and kids chasing bubbles across freshly mowed lawns. The moment I pulled into the gravel lot in my old Honda Civic, I knew I was out of place. The rest of the lot was filled with shiny SUVs, luxury sedans, and one obnoxiously red convertible that could only belong to my cousin Evan. As I stepped out, adjusting the cuffs of my button-down, I caught sight of my reflection in the car window. I looked fine. Not flashy. Not broke. Just fine. And that, somehow, already felt like a disadvantage. The first greeting came from Aunt Doreen. Tight smile, loud hug, too much perfume. "Nathan," she said, like the name had dust on it. "Still living in, what was it, Seattle? Or did you finally come to your senses and move back where the real jobs are?" I gave her a polite nod and a half smile. "Still in Seattle. Doing that tech thing?" she asked, eyes squinting like she was trying to recall whether I sold printers or designed video games. "Yeah," I said. "Still doing that tech thing." And that was how it began. One by one, the relatives trickled in with their thin smiles and barely veiled curiosity. My cousin Tara mentioned her real estate firm 5 times in a single conversation, and Uncle Rick made a point of talking about how his son had just been promoted to regional manager at some firm I'd never heard of. Everyone, it seemed, was subtly jockeying for status. Except me. I sat at the corner table near the drink station, sipping watered-down lemonade and watching the breeze flutter the corner of the dessert table's tablecloth. Then came the moment I should have expected. My uncle, Uncle Vernon, my dad's younger brother, sauntered over with that same crooked grin he wore at every holiday dinner. The one that made you feel like you were already the punchline to a joke he hadn't told yet. "Nate," he said, clapping me on the shoulder like we were old college buddies. "You still doing that silly tech job? Thought you'd have given up by now." There was a pause. Not long enough to be awkward, but enough to let the chuckles roll in from the nearby table. My cousin Alex laughed a little too loud. My aunt chuckled into her wine glass. I didn't say anything. I just smiled faintly and turned my attention back to my plate of potato salad. Uncle Vernon wasn't done. "You know," he continued, leaning on the chair across from me. "I remember when you were little, always breaking stuff. Remotes, radios. And now you're the computer guy, huh? World sure is upside down." The laughter was louder this time. Not cruel exactly, but it had an edge. A certain delight in seeing someone else squirm. I wanted to say something, anything, but I kept eating. I'd learned long ago that arguing never changed their minds. They liked me boxed up, easy to dismiss. Challenging that image only made them dig deeper. So I sat there, quietly, the corners of my mouth tight, my chest buzzing with a heat I refused to show. A few minutes passed. Conversations resumed. The attention shifted back to Uncle Vernon's golf stories and Aunt Marie's latest cruise photos. I kept eating in silence, half listening, half zoning out. That's when it happened. A low murmur spread from the far side of the lawn, near the valet entrance. Heads turned. A man in a perfectly tailored navy blue suit had just stepped out of a sleek black car that didn't quite belong in our dusty parking lot. His walk was purposeful, crisp, with a confident gait that made people straighten up instinctively. He wasn't just wealthy, he had presence. Whispers floated through the tent. "Wait, is that? Isn't he the guy from that Forbes list? Looks like someone important." He scanned the crowd, eyes moving past clusters of relatives and hors d'oeuvres tables until they landed on me. I blinked, unsure if I was imagining things. But then he smiled, broad, familiar, and walked straight toward my corner table. My Aunt Marie grabbed her husband's arm. "Wait, isn't that the billionaire who owns?" Before anyone could finish, he was at my side. He clapped me on the back with a warmth that broke through the awkward chill in the air. "Boss," he said, "didn't expect to see you here." Every fork in the tent paused midair. Conversation stopped. Even the kids chasing bubbles went still. My mouth opened, but no words came out. He grinned, leaned in slightly, and said loud enough for most of the tent to hear, "Your offer went through. You now own the whole block. The development team's already prepping the site." Silence. Thick. Staggering. And in that silence, I turned to see my Uncle Vernon, still holding a glass of champagne mid-toast, eyes wide, hand frozen midair. His drink tilted just slightly, and a single drop slid down the side of the flute, unnoticed. His jaw moved like he wanted to say something, but no words came out, and I just sat there, blinking slowly, trying not to laugh. "Good to see you, Nate," the man added. "We'll finalize the deal Monday. Enjoy your time with the family." He patted my shoulder again, nodded once at the table, and walked back toward his car, leaving behind a trail of stunned silence, whispered guesses, and the unmistakable sting of realization settling in on every face around me. And that's when Uncle Vernon finally spoke. There was a long pause before Uncle Vernon managed to make a sound. He lowered his glass slightly, blinked as if trying to reset his brain, and then finally rasped out, "Wait, you know him?" I turned slowly, still chewing the last bite of coleslaw, swallowed, and looked him dead in the eyes. "Yeah, we work together. Sort of. You work for him?" Aunt Doreen cut in, eyes wide like a kid spotting Santa at the mall. I didn't answer right away. I just set my fork down gently, dabbed the corner of my mouth with a napkin, and leaned back in my chair. "He's on the advisory board of my company. We've been collaborating on a few expansion projects." The words hit the table like a dropped brick. My cousin Alex coughed and tried to act normal, but his face was already flushed pink. Someone dropped a fork. My Aunt Marie just whispered something under her breath and stared at her wine like it might offer an explanation. Uncle Vernon, still not fully caught up, frowned. "Wait, hold on. Your company." I gave a single, patient nod. "Yeah. Started it about 4 years ago. We specialize in infrastructure management for mid-scale cities. Think traffic optimization, predictive utility maintenance, digital zoning systems, stuff like that." "But that doesn't sound like," he trailed off. "That doesn't sound like a real company." I almost laughed, not out of cruelty, but because of the pure irony. The man had built his life around belittling others while clinging to his small-town dealership job like it was the center of the universe. But I didn't say that. I just gave a soft shrug and said, "It's boring to explain, I guess, but real enough." My cousin Evan wandered over, twirling his car keys like he always did when he was nervous. "Wait, is this the company that's been bidding on the commercial redevelopment project on Jefferson Block?" I turned to him. "Yeah, that's ours. We just got confirmation today that the city approved the deal." He let out a low whistle. "Dude, that's prime real estate. The whole tech hub's moving into that area." Uncle Vernon finally sat down across from me, no longer smug, just confused. "But why didn't you say anything?" he asked, voice quieter now. "All these years, and you never told anyone?" That question landed heavier than I expected. For a second, the noise around us faded again, like the tent was holding its breath. I looked at him, really looked at him, and let the silence stretch. Then I said, "Because when I did say something, years ago, everyone laughed. Remember? When I told you I wanted to start my own business. You said I'd be lucky to get a job fixing printers at Best Buy. You call me the tech dreamer." He opened his mouth to deny it, but then closed it again. I continued, my voice calm but firm. So I stopped explaining. I figured if anyone really wanted to know, they'd ask. Aunt Doreen mumbled something about how they were just teasing and didn't mean anything by it. I smiled at her. "Sure, I know, but it still taught me to keep things close." There was an awkward pause, the kind that made people fiddle with their napkins and suddenly remember urgent phone calls. Most of the tent was pretending not to eavesdrop, but the hush told me they were hanging on every word. My younger cousin Maddie, who had always been a little quieter than the rest, slipped over and whispered, "That was really cool." I smiled genuinely. "Thanks, Maddie." Then the questions started coming in. Not from Uncle Vernon or the aunts and uncles, but from the younger cousins. Evan asked what tech stack we used. Maddie asked how I got the idea. Even Alex leaned in and asked how I got investors on board. Suddenly, I wasn't the punchline. I was the panel speaker at an unplanned career Q&A session. But Uncle Vernon wasn't done yet. No, not by a long shot. He stood up, cleared his throat, and raised his voice just enough to sound dadly, without sounding desperate. "Well, good for you, Nate," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Still, you should have mentioned it. Family supports family, right? We'd have been proud. Maybe even helped if you needed a little startup cash." I tilted my head slightly, incredulous. "You mean the same family that thought I was wasting my time?" "Come on, don't be like that," he said, trying to chuckle. "We didn't really think that. We just didn't understand what you were doing." I nodded slowly. "Exactly." He faltered for a beat. And then, right on cue, Aunt Marie chimed in with the first real dagger. "Well, if Nate's doing so well now, maybe he could help out with the family fundraiser next month. Your cousin Taylor's going to Europe for her art residency. The travel costs have been steep." My eyes locked on hers. "So this is what it comes to, huh?" The tent got even quieter. And just as I was about to answer her, another figure entered the tent. Another stranger to the rest of the family, but not to me. This time, it was my lawyer. He walked briskly toward me with a manila folder under his arm, nodded at me, and said in his calm, professional tone, "Sorry to interrupt, Nate, but I thought you'd want to sign off on the final offer documents for the old riverfront project. Everything's lined up." Aunt Doreen's eyes nearly popped out of her head. I took the folder, flipped it open, scanned the pages briefly, and scribbled my signature. "Thanks, Mark," I said, handing it back. "Send it over to the Planning Commission." He nodded and left. I looked around the tent again. This time, I didn't need to say anything. The silence spoke for itself. And then, finally, Uncle Vernon said the one thing that made the entire table go stiff. "I didn't realize you had that kind of money." But I didn't respond to him. Not yet. Because just then, my phone buzzed, and the name on the screen was someone who would shift the room even more than the billionaire or the lawyer had. The name on the screen lit up in crisp white letters. C. Thornwell. The reaction from the table wasn't immediate. Most of them didn't know who that was. But a few, including Evan and Maddie, leaned closer. I saw Evan's brow wrinkle like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Maddie's eyes went wide. "Is that?" Evan whispered. I held up a finger as I answered the call. "Hey, Thorn. Yeah, I'm at the reunion. Just wrapping up lunch. What's up?" A brief pause on the other end. I could hear chatter, office noise, keyboards, movement, before a deep, clipped voice responded. "Didn't want to bug you, boss, but the Singapore numbers just landed. They're even better than forecasted. That bump in transit analytics paid off." I nodded, as if we were chatting about grocery lists. "That's good. Send me the full report when you can." "Oh, and CFO says congratulations. Your valuation just crossed the threshold. We'll be sending the media release later today, but you're officially past the billion mark. You did it." My fingers curled tighter around the phone, but my voice stayed level. "Appreciate it, Thorn. Talk soon." I hung up, quietly, casually. The table, on the other hand, was not quiet. 8 billion. Alex repeated, blinking like he was trying to reset his vision. Evan sat down slowly, like gravity had changed. Wait. Are you saying your company, you, are worth $1 billion? I didn't answer directly. Instead, I reached for my drink and took a slow sip of lemonade, letting the silence stretch. "I knew it," Maddie muttered, almost to herself. "You were never just the tech guy. You were building something this whole time." But not everyone was stunned into admiration. Uncle Vernon leaned back in his chair, arms folded tight. His expression had changed, no longer smug or confused, just hard, like someone watching their grip on a rope slowly slip away, knot by knot. "You sure kept this quiet," he said, voice low. "Wasn't hiding anything," I replied. "Just didn't think anyone cared." "We did care," Aunt Doreen cut in. "We're family. You should have told us. We would have supported you." "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. Would that be before or after everyone laughed at me for starting a software company in my garage? A few people shifted in their seats. No one offered a rebuttal. "I worked day and night for years." I continued, my tone still calm but firmer now. "While you all were sending group texts about me being the IT dropout, or asking if I could fix your router at Thanksgiving. I was designing a municipal AI system that now runs in 6 cities. I've pitched to councils, hired teams, lost sleep, lost money, rebuilt it all again. And not once, not one single time, did anyone call and ask, "How's it going?" Not even once. A heavy silence fell. I could see Aunt Marie trying to conjure some response, her lips pursing, eyes darting. But now, I added, gesturing vaguely around the table, now that the word billion is in the air, suddenly everyone's interested. That's not fair. Uncle Vernon snapped, voice rising. Isn't it? I asked, looking him square in the eyes. His jaw clenched. You think just because you've got some money now, you're better than us? No, I said, without hesitation. I think I'm no longer beneath you. And that seems to bother you. That silenced him more than anything else had. I saw him glance toward the other tables, where the rest of the family had now entirely stopped pretending not to watch. A few uncles stared down at their drinks. My Aunt Marie had gone pale. Cousin Taylor looked like she wanted to teleport out of the tent. But the final blow didn't come from me. It came from Maddie. She stood up slowly, looking around at everyone with a quiet kind of disappointment. You all made fun of him for years, she said. And now you're embarrassed because he made it without you. Maddie, Aunt Doreen started. No, Maddie snapped, her voice rising slightly. Let's not pretend. I remember the texts. The jokes. The Christmas where everyone said he should just give up and move home. He built a company that's changing cities, and you're mad because he didn't invite you along for the ride. Her voice cracked a little at the end. She wasn't trying to humiliate them. She was hurt, genuinely hurt. And for the first time, the guilt in the tent was real. Not the fake, awkward kind that comes when you get caught, but the heavy, cold kind that settles in when you realize you were the villain in someone else's story. That's when Aunt Marie stood up and said, quietly, maybe we should take a short break. But I wasn't done. I stood, brushing off my hands, and looked around the table. I've got no interest in making this a public shaming session, I said. I came here to see family. But let's not rewrite history to make everyone feel better. You didn't believe in me, and I don't hold a grudge for that. I just don't forget it. And then I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small, folded card. I handed it to Uncle Vernon. He looked down at it, frowning. What's this? The projected valuation report, I said. The one you said I'd never live to see. I had it printed just for you. And with that, I turned and started walking away toward the edge of the lawn where the gravel path led toward the parked cars. But just as I reached the valet, I heard running footsteps behind me. Nate, wait, Maddie called out. I turned. She caught up to me, a little out of breath. You're leaving? For now, I said. I've got meetings Monday. Singapore expansion. She looked up at me for a long moment. I'm sorry for how they treated you. I shook my head. You don't owe me an apology. You never treated me that way. She hesitated, then asked, will you come back next year? I gave a long pause, then smiled. Depends on who's still sitting at the corner table. But before I could get in the car, I saw someone else approaching. Not Maddie, not Evan, Uncle Vernon. And his face wasn't angry anymore. It was something else entirely. He raised a hand. Wait, before you go? There's something I need to say. He stopped a few feet away from me, awkwardly adjusting his belt like it gave him time to think. Uncle Vernon had always been the loudest in the room, the one with the jokes, the cheap barstool wisdom, the dismissive smirks. But now he stood with his mouth slightly open, staring at me like I was someone he'd never really looked at before. He started, then cleared his throat. I didn't know. I raised an eyebrow. Didn't know what? That you were actually doing something real. That you were successful. I kept my hands in my pockets, watching him carefully. You didn't ask. You assumed. He gave a small, regretful nod. Yeah, I guess I did. I figured you were just messing around with apps or whatever. I didn't think you'd. He let the sentence trail off like it physically hurt to finish. Build something, I offered. He looked away. Yeah. The breeze blew gently through the trees behind us, and I watched him as the weight of years settled onto his shoulders. The swagger was gone. The condescension, too. What remained was just a man who had underestimated someone, and now had to face that in full view of everyone. I know I messed up, he muttered, scratching the back of his neck. I treated you like a joke. Didn't think much of what you were doing. But I guess I was wrong. I let the silence stretch. I didn't want to bail him out of it. He looked back at me, his eyes more honest than I'd seen them in years. So, I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Really. For all the times I made you feel like you weren't worth much. That was wrong of me. It wasn't a dramatic apology. It wasn't filled with poetic regret or begging. But it was sincere. And coming from Vernon, that was monumental. I nodded once. Thank you. He exhaled like he'd been holding that breath all day. I don't expect you to forgive me or anything. I just wanted you to know. I don't hold grudges, Vernon, I said. But I don't forget either. He gave a tight smile. Fair enough. Then, like it was the only thing he could think to say, he added, if your company ever needs trucks or fleet vehicles, well, you know where to find me. And there it was. A flicker of the old Vernon. Not mean this time, not mocking, just trying to offer something in return. It made me chuckle. I extended my hand. I'll keep that in mind. He shook it, then nodded once before walking back toward the tent, slower than usual, like his mind was somewhere else. I got into the car, finally ready to leave. But as I pulled onto the gravel path, I glanced at the rearview mirror. The reunion was still in full swing, but something about the energy had changed. Less laughter, more whispers. Some cousins were looking my way. Others avoided it. It didn't bother me. I wasn't that kid they dismissed anymore. 3 days later, I was back in Seattle, sitting in my office on the 23rd floor of a building I now owned. The city skyline shimmered in the distance. Screens on the wall blinked with live analytics from our different branches: San Diego, Denver, Toronto, soon Singapore. Thornwell entered with a document folder under one arm and a coffee in the other. Press release went live, he said. Bloomberg already picked it up. Urban Neural Systems passes billion-dollar valuation. You want me to approve interview requests? Just pick a couple, preferably ones that don't want a rags to riches headline. He gave me a smirk. Can't guarantee that. I shrugged. Still not the headline I want. He hesitated, then handed me another envelope. This also came in. Certified mail. From a Vernon Mitchell. I took the envelope, opening it carefully. Inside was a short, handwritten note on dealership letterhead. Nate, I meant what I said. And if this note feels out of place, it's because I've never written one before. But I'm proud of you. You earned everything you've got. If you ever want to stop by the old place, lunch is on me. Vernon. I stared at it for a moment, then slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk. I didn't need to frame it or read it again. It was enough that it existed. Weeks passed. The company kept growing. I traveled more, held meetings with mayors and boards and planners, helped cities run smarter and smoother. But the reunion didn't fade from memory like others had. This one stuck. Then, one day in late fall, Maddie emailed me. It was short. Hey, I applied for a data science internship. Hope you don't mind. I used you as a reference. P.S. If your team's hiring next summer, let me know. M. I smiled at the screen. She had always been sharp, just buried under the weight of that family's noise. I replied, I don't mind. In fact, I already told HR to watch for your name. You've got potential, Mads. The real kind. N. Months later, I returned to the same estate for another family gathering. This time a birthday party for one of the younger cousins. I wasn't planning to attend, but Maddie had texted me directly. This time, I saved you a seat at the front table. When I arrived, things felt different. Warmer. More measured. People didn't trip over themselves trying to impress me. But they didn't dismiss me either. Aunt Doreen gave a tight hug and actually asked questions about the business. Evan showed me a new app he was building. Even Alex admitted, you proved us wrong, man. Big time. But the best part? When I sat down at the table, Maddie passed me a plate and said with a grin, no corner table this time. I looked around the room, then back at her. Nope, I said. Not anymore. And for the first time in a very long time, being with family didn't feel like a chore. It felt like closure. Maybe even the beginning of something better. Because sometimes, the best revenge is living well enough that they finally see you. Not the version they mocked, doubted, or underestimated, but the real you. The one who never stopped building, even when nobody else was watching. I was 22 when I passed out in the middle of the student union food court after my last final exam. Stress, dehydration, 2 straight nights without sleep, and the crushing weight of knowing that no matter how well I did, it would never be enough for them. It all finally caught up. 1 second I was trying to sip my cold brew and scroll through celebratory memes, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up under bright lights with a nurse holding a clipboard and in 4 already in my arm. Carter, you're in the hospital. You collapsed, she said, voice calm but firm, like she'd said it 100 times. "You're going to be okay." She had kind eyes, the kind that immediately made me feel both safer and strangely embarrassed. I nodded, dazed, trying to remember what day it was. My throat was dry. My whole body felt like a balloon someone had let the air out of. I wanted to ask her what time it was, maybe even joke that finals really had taken years off my life, but I could barely speak. They told me later it was sheer exhaustion, compounded by stress-induced dehydration. The kind of thing that sneaks up on you slowly, then pounces. They'd called my emergency contact, my mom, and then my backup contact, my brother. No answer from either of them. Not even a text. That part didn't surprise me. Not really. It stung, but it didn't shock. My family had a habit of only showing up when it benefited them. I was the golden ticket, as my brother Josh used to call me. Always sarcastically, always with a sneer. I got the grades, won the scholarships, earned the approval of distant relatives who didn't know better. I wasn't the oldest, that was Josh, 25, full of noise and ego, or the youngest, that was Lexi, 17, endlessly babied. But I was the one who'd gotten out. The one who didn't flunk classes, didn't get caught sneaking beer into the basement, didn't mouth off at family dinners. So, naturally, I was the one resented the most. Mom used to say things like, "Carter, you're our easy one," as if that meant she didn't need to worry about me. As if I didn't need support. As if being the good one was permission to ignore me completely. So when the nurse told me no one had come, I just smiled a little, nodded, and said, "Yeah, that tracks." The only reason I knew they were even aware I was hospitalized was because, later that night, when I finally got access to my phone, I checked my notifications and found one of Josh's Instagram posts. A photo of his feet propped on the coffee table, a beer in one hand, Xbox controller in the other. The caption read, "Peace and quiet at last." I stared at it for a long minute. I wasn't tagged or mentioned by name, but I didn't have to be. He'd posted it 3 hours after the hospital called him. It didn't make me angry. Not yet. Anger's something that needs energy. What I felt was something colder. Emptier. I set the phone down and turned my head toward the window. There was a crack in the blinds, just wide enough for a sliver of moonlight. That night, I didn't cry. I just stayed quiet. A week passed. I didn't leave the hospital. My vitals were stable, but I was still on fluids. My blood pressure was a yo-yo, my appetite vanished, and the doctors didn't love the way I flinched every time someone opened the door too loudly. Turns out, when your body breaks, it doesn't just bounce back. It mourns itself, slowly, quietly, and the silence from home continued. No visits, no calls, not even Lexi, who used to be my little shadow before she hit high school and suddenly decided I was boring. I thought maybe it was better this way. Maybe I needed the silence. No guilt trips. No passive-aggressive "we miss you" texts. Just space. Until the 8th morning. That was the day I woke up to 42 missed calls. Most were from Mom. A few from Josh. One from Lexi. But it was the text that followed that made my stomach twist. From Mom, "We're in trouble. Call now." I read it 3 times. I don't know what I expected to feel. Panic, worry, fear. But what I actually felt was something much darker. Something deep and still, like the bottom of a lake just before a storm. Because I did call her back, but not for the reason they hoped. And if I'm going to tell you that story, the full story, you need to understand exactly who these people were. Not just what they did to me that week, but what they'd been doing my entire life. You need to know how it felt to be Carter, the invisible child who never fought back, who never asked for more, who thought love meant staying silent so everyone else could speak. Because this isn't just a story about hospital calls or final exams. It's a story about waking up. And it all started years before that call. You know what's funny? When I was a kid, I thought all families were like mine. I thought it was normal to get grounded for getting a 91 on a math test when your brother barely scraped by with CS and still got taken out for burgers. I thought it made sense that I had to babysit Lexi for free every weekend. But Josh got $50 just for not forgetting her at the mall once. I thought, "You're the responsible one," was a compliment, like being ignored was a reward for good behavior. That's the thing about growing up inside dysfunction. You learn to calibrate your expectations around it. You learn to shrink your voice so it doesn't echo too loud, to walk softly when you're already doing everything right. You learn that being low maintenance isn't a survival tactic. It's a role, one you don't get to leave. So by the time I left for college, I wasn't bitter. Not yet. I was just tired. Tired of always being the one who gave, who bent, who covered for everyone else. I thought getting away would fix it, that if I studied hard enough, graduated fast enough, maybe I could come back home and finally be seen. But home didn't miss me. It just replaced me. Let me rewind a little. Josh, he was always the loud one. Life of the party, Mr. Charisma. He didn't care about rules, and he didn't care who cleaned up his mess. He got arrested once at 19 for shoplifting with his friends. Mom bailed him out with money from my college savings. She didn't even tell me until I noticed the statement. Her excuse? It's just money, Carter. He needed help. Don't be selfish. Lexi, on the other hand, was the baby. Fragile, dramatic, always on the edge of some new disaster. When she started failing classes in high school, guess who got roped into tutoring her every evening via FaceTime while juggling my own midterms? And when she cried about how, "You're so lucky, Carter, you're good at everything," guess who had to comfort her instead of snapping? I kept telling myself I was the glue, that if I just held on a little longer, kept doing the right thing, they'd notice. They'd come around. They didn't. By junior year of college, I'd stopped coming home for the holidays. I told them it was to save money, but the truth was, I couldn't stomach another Thanksgiving where Josh showed up late, reeking of weed, and still got to carve the turkey while Mom asked me to take more photos of the family. As if I was the hired photographer, not a member of it. They stopped asking me questions. They stopped calling unless they needed something. And then came senior year. Finals. Pressure. Panic attacks I didn't tell anyone about. A part-time job at the campus library. 2 research papers, a presentation, and a capstone project. I had no time for myself, no margin for error. I was running on fumes. The morning I collapsed, I'd been awake for almost 40 hours. I remember thinking, as I handed in my final paper, just a few more hours and you can breathe. Funny. I guess my body decided it couldn't wait. I've already told you about waking up in the hospital, about Josh's peace and quiet post. But what I didn't say, what I didn't want to admit even to myself, was that I still hoped they'd come. Day 2. I kept the curtain cracked, just in case someone walked in. Day 4. I told myself maybe they didn't know which hospital. The nurse confirmed they did. Day 6. The nurse asked if I had any friends who could bring me a change of clothes. That one hurt. I didn't have the energy to reach out to classmates. I barely spoke to people outside of group projects. I was always too busy for parties, too focused to waste time dating. It hit me that the only people who ever depended on me, ever expected anything from me, were the ones who weren't here now. Then came day 8. The phone call. 42 missed calls. Mom, Josh, Lexi. The text from Mom. We're in trouble. Call now. I remember staring at it for a full minute, debating whether I should even bother. But curiosity's a funny thing. It doesn't care if you're hurt. It just wants to know. So I called. Mom picked up instantly. "Oh, thank God. Carter," she said, like I was the one who vanished. "We need you to come home. Now." No greeting. No "how are you?" No acknowledgement of the hospital call. I waited a beat. "I've been in the hospital." A pause. "Yes. Well, we figured you were okay." They didn't say it was life-threatening. I said nothing. Just let that sink in. She rushed on. "It's Josh. He's in trouble. Serious trouble." Of course. Apparently, Josh had racked up $12,000 in credit card debt under Dad's name. Dad passed away when I was 16. Another story entirely. And the bank had frozen the family account. Mom had just found out when trying to pay the mortgage. Lexi needed tuition for her private school next month. Bills were piling up. They needed help. And that's when she dropped it. "We know you've been saving your stipend, sweetheart. And you got that scholarship refund last semester. Can you come home and help us sort this out?" She said it like it was obvious. Like I owed them. I sat up in my hospital bed, the 4 tugging slightly at my arm. "You're asking me for money?" "No," she said quickly. "Well, yes. But just for now. Josh made a mistake. You know how he is. He panicked. He's still your brother. Still my brother. The same brother who once locked me in the garage for 2 hours because I wouldn't do his homework. The same brother who went to prom with my crush in senior year, just to mess with me. The same brother who, 8 days ago, posted about peace and quiet while I was unconscious in a hospital bed. I didn't say anything. Just let the silence drag. Mom filled it with guilt, as always. "Carter, we've always supported you. We paid for your first semester. We've been here for you. You used my college fund to bail Josh out of jail." She didn't respond. "I've been here alone for over a week," I said, my voice flat. "No calls. No visits. I passed out, Mom. You're strong. You always have been. I almost laughed. That's the problem, I thought. You think my strength is infinite, that it means I don't need anything. But I was done being strong for people who only noticed when I became useful. She kept talking, making promises. If I helped them now, they'd pay me back. Josh would apologize. Lexi would call. We could be a family again. I told her I needed to think. I hung up. Then I scrolled through Josh's feed again. He'd deleted the peace and quiet post. But the internet never forgets. I'd taken a screenshot. And right below it, a newer post. A photo of him sitting in the driver's seat of a new car. Grinding pays off, the caption said. That car? Registered under Mom's name. I remembered because I helped her apply for the loan last summer. That was the moment something shifted. The moment the dam broke. I wasn't just hurt. I was angry. But not the loud, explosive kind. Not the kind Josh was famous for. This was the cold, quiet kind of anger. The kind that sees patterns and starts making plans. I closed my phone, leaned back in bed, and I started to think. Because if they wanted my help, if they thought I was still the quiet, compliant, selfless, good son who would always come home when called, then maybe it was time they learned what silence really sounds like when it breaks. And the best part? They had no idea what was coming. Not yet. After I hung up that call with Mom, I sat in the hospital bed for a long time and just stared at the wall. The 4-bag above me was half drained, humming with a soft, mechanical rhythm that somehow made the silence around me louder. I watched the drip, drip, drip like it was hypnotizing me. Not thinking, not planning, just absorbing. Because as much as I'd love to say I felt empowered after that call, like I finally stood up for myself, that would be a lie. I felt broken. I felt empty. Like I had just opened the last door in a house that had no rooms left. And all I'd found inside was dust. It's one thing to know deep down that your family doesn't care. It's another thing to have it confirmed. Out loud. Repeatedly. And the worst part? A part of me still wanted to help them. A part of me still ached to be wanted, to be appreciated, to be told, just once, thank you for holding it all together. But I knew now, that wasn't coming. I stayed in the hospital 2 more days. They wanted to monitor my blood pressure and run tests. I didn't mind. It was the first time in years anyone checked in on me for more than what I could do for them. Nurses asked how I was sleeping. Doctors listened when I said, I'm still not hungry. One of the interns brought me a Sudoku book because I mentioned I liked puzzles. It was weird, getting that kind of quiet attention. It made me realize how starved I was for basic human care. On my final day, I signed the discharge papers myself. I packed my stuff slowly, folding my worn hoodie and laptop charger into the same backpack I'd carried since sophomore year. My shoes were still crusted with salt from the snowy sidewalks. I didn't even have a winter coat with me. I'd been too focused on surviving finals to think about weather. As I walked out of the hospital, I passed a woman being wheeled in by her teenage son. She was pale and shaking, clearly frightened, but he held her hand the entire time. I tried not to stare, but I couldn't help thinking, that could have been me, if I'd mattered. I took the bus back to my off-campus apartment. My roommate, Luis, was gone for winter break, so the place was dark and quiet. I dropped my bag and just stood in the middle of the living room for a minute, disoriented. The silence used to be a comfort. Now it felt like a vacuum. I opened the fridge. Empty except for mustard and an expired container of Greek yogurt. I closed it again. Then I sat on the floor and cried. It wasn't loud, just quiet, miserable shaking. The kind where your ribs ache and your breath keeps catching. I didn't even wipe my face. I just sat there, curled around my knees, letting the loneliness finally pour out of me. It was the lowest point I'd ever hit. No family, no food, no one texting to ask if I was okay. And even though I had just passed all my exams and technically finished my final semester early, I didn't feel victorious. I felt disposable, like I'd built my entire life trying to prove I was worth loving, and all I had to show for it was a degree and a hollow chest. But the thing about rock bottom is, once you hit it, you stop being afraid of falling, because you're already there. So that night, still sitting on the cold tile floor of my kitchen, I opened my laptop and started making a plan. I didn't tell anyone. Not Luis. Not old classmates. Definitely not my family. I decided I was going to disappear, not physically, but emotionally. No more updates. No more calls home. No more second chances. They wanted me to be the strong one. Fine. They could see how strong I'd become when I stopped using that strength to prop them up. The first step was simple: cut contact. I blocked Josh, blocked Lexi. I didn't block Mom yet, but I muted her, put her on silent. I wanted to see what she'd say when she realized I wasn't replying. She didn't say much. A few guilt-laced texts. One, "We really need to talk." Then radio silence. Then I transferred the last of my stipend into a new savings account with a digital bank, one they didn't know I used. Next, I applied for an internship I'd been eyeing for months. A nonprofit education foundation in Boston, remote, flexible, mission-driven. I'd bookmarked the application weeks ago, but hadn't dared to apply. I didn't think I had the time, or the guts. But now, I had nothing but time, and guts were all I had left. I submitted it at 2:17 a.m., along with a cover letter I rewrote 4 times. I poured every ounce of quiet fury and resilience into that letter. Told them how education had been my lifeline, how I wanted to help students like me, the forgotten ones. The easy kids who never got the support they needed because they weren't loud about their pain. I didn't expect to hear back. So when I got the interview email 2 days later, I almost didn't believe it was real. The interview was over Zoom. I wore the only blazer I owned and set my laptop on top of a cardboard box to get the right height. I was shaking the whole time, but I channeled the version of myself I wanted to be: confident, focused, sharp. They hired me on the spot. 3-month internship, part-time, with the option to go full-time after graduation. I didn't tell anyone. It felt good, clean, to have something just for me. The next few weeks were a blur. I still didn't have much money, so I stretched every dollar. Rice and frozen vegetables. Free coffee from campus events. I sold my old textbooks and used the cash to buy a decent secondhand coat. I taught myself how to cook simple meals. I made a rule: 1 hot meal a day, no matter what. I read books. Not for class, just for me. I reread The Catcher in the Rye and realized I related to Holden way more than I ever admitted. I started journaling. Just a few sentences a day. Mostly things like, "Didn't cry today," or "Ate lunch with protein." It wasn't poetic, but it was mine. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started to rise. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, just little wins. A day without checking my phone every 5 minutes. A moment of silence that didn't feel like abandonment. A night where I fell asleep without thinking of Josh's smirk or Mom's voice in my head. I didn't talk to my family. Not even when Lexi texted, "Hey," one night out of the blue. I didn't answer. She didn't follow up. Mom sent a Happy New Year message. "We hope you're doing well. We miss you." She attached a photo of the family dinner table, my chair empty. I stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. Because I wasn't missing anymore. I was rebuilding. And by March, I was thriving. The foundation offered me the full-time position. Remote, $55,000 a year, benefits included. I accepted it within 10 minutes. It was the most money I'd ever seen on a contract. I moved out of the apartment in April and got a studio by myself. Small, bare walls, but it was mine. My name on the lease. My groceries in the fridge. My life. I got a gym membership. Not to bulk up, just to feel strong in my own skin again. I started therapy through the foundation's health plan. My therapist's name was Elise. She didn't ask about my family for the first 3 sessions. Just asked what I wanted. I didn't know how to answer that. I'd never been asked before. But little by little, I figured it out. I wanted peace. I wanted distance. I wanted to stop feeling like I owed everyone something just to exist. By summer, I felt like a different person. Not healed, not entirely, but solid. Which is why, when the letter arrived, the physical letter, not an email, I almost laughed. A thick envelope with my mother's handwriting on the front. No return address. Just my name. Inside was a card. One of those generic, thinking of you, ones with a watercolor flower on the front. And a note inside, scribbled fast, like she was afraid of what she was writing. "Carter, we're really in trouble now. Josh did something serious. Please call. We need you. You're the only one who can fix this." No apology. No acknowledgement of the months of silence. Just need. Always need. Always me, the fix-it man. But this time I wasn't just stronger. I was ready. Because I had a plan. And they were about to learn the difference between the Carter who kept quiet and the Carter who watched everything, remembered everything, and finally had nothing left to lose. And when I say I called them back, I did. But not the way they expected. Not even close. I didn't call them back right away. I let the letter sit on my desk for 2 days. Every time I walked past it, I felt like I was walking past a fire someone else started, a fire they now expected me to put out. I knew what it was. Another crisis. Another self-inflicted disaster. Another desperate reach for the person they'd spent years ignoring until it was convenient. And I'll be honest, for a split second, I almost tossed it. Straight into the trash. Because I was doing well. I had a job I loved. I had peace. I'd gone from nearly collapsing under pressure to rebuilding my entire life from scratch. But this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about setting something straight. See, I'd spent most of my life thinking silence was safety, that staying quiet kept the peace, that if I just worked hard, stayed invisible, and kept my head down, the universe would reward me. It doesn't. Silence isn't safety. It's just the space entitled people fill with their own voices when yours is missing. And I was done giving them that space. So I picked up the letter one final time. Reread the sloppy ink. You're the only one who can fix this. Funny, considering I hadn't heard from any of them in over 4 months. Not a happy birthday. Not a check-in. Just another emergency, another demand. I didn't call. I emailed. It felt cleaner. Sharper. More formal. Like drawing a boundary in pen instead of pencil. Subject. Family emergency. Hi, Mom. I received your letter. I hope everyone is safe. I'm not sure what serious thing Josh did this time, but I can't promise I'll help. Not until I have more information. I'm very busy with work and have commitments I can't drop. If you want me to hear you out, you'll need to tell me everything first. In writing. No games this time. Carter. I sent it, closed the laptop, and made lunch. Didn't even check for a reply until the next morning. When I did, I had 3. One from Mom, one from Josh, and one from an unexpected source, Lexi. I opened Mom's first. Carter. I don't appreciate the cold tone, but I'll do as you asked. Josh was caught forging checks in Dad's name again. He used old documents from the safe in the garage. The police came to the house last week. They're investigating possible fraud. If they file charges, it could mean jail. The account is frozen. The mortgage is 2 months behind. My credit is tanking. We need money to pay legal fees and fix this mess. We thought maybe you could talk to a lawyer friend from college, or see if there's any way to spin the situation. You always had a way with words. Spin. That was the word she used. Not solve. Not understand. Not take accountability. Spin. Like I was a PR firm. Like this was just another temporary embarrassment to sweep under the rug. Josh's email was shorter. Bro, Mom says you blocked me. Fine. But this isn't my fault. Those checks were old and no one was using the money anyway. I'm not going down for this. If you don't help, it's on you. Jay? There it was. No apology. No acknowledgement of what he did. Just the same smug entitlement he'd always had. As if he was the victim, and I was the unreasonable one for not rushing in to save him. But the real surprise? Lexi's email. Carter, I know I don't have the right to ask you for anything. I know I haven't been there. But I didn't know how bad things were getting until the cops showed up. Mom's freaking out. Josh is blaming everyone. I don't know what to do. I graduate next year, but Mom says we might have to sell the house. And she keeps saying Carter will fix it. I don't think that's fair. You shouldn't have to. I'm sorry. For everything. I just wanted you to know I don't expect anything. I hope you're okay. Lexi. It wasn't a full apology, but it wasn't a demand, either. That meant something. I didn't reply to any of them right away. Instead, I started gathering my cards. Step 1 was legal knowledge. I wasn't a lawyer, but I was methodical. And one thing you learn from growing up in a family like mine is how to observe, how to file away little details, how to read between the lines. So I went digging. I started with Dad's estate. He'd passed away 6 years ago when I was 16. Heart attack. Sudden. He wasn't perfect, distant, strict, but he had been the only one in the family who didn't treat me like furniture. He'd leave notes in my lunchbox. Taught me how to budget. Let me stay up late to watch Nova documentaries. He was the one who called me the calm in the storm. When he died, Mom took over all the finances. She told us everything was under control, that the house was in her name now, that Dad's accounts had been consolidated. But I remembered something. Something small. A conversation from years ago, just days after the funeral. I was sitting at the kitchen table, still in my black slacks, barely eating my mashed potatoes. Josh was whining about not getting Dad's watch. And Mom, clearly exhausted, snapped. You'll get what's yours when the trust says so. The trust. Not the will. Not the estate. The trust. That word stuck with me. I never asked about it again. I was a teenager, grieving. But now, it clicked. So I called a lawyer. Not a friend. I didn't have many, but a colleague from the foundation who used to work in estate planning. Her name was Danielle. She agreed to a quick consult. I told her the situation in broad strokes. No names. Just hypotheticals. What happens, I asked, if someone sets up a trust for their kids, and one of the kids never sees any of it? She asked a few questions. Age of the kids, who the trustee was, whether the trust had an expiration date. I told her everything I remembered, including that I was 16 when he died, and Mom took over everything immediately. That sounds like a family trust, she said slowly. Irrevocable, possibly. You may still be a beneficiary. If your name was on that trust and it never dissolved, there's a legal paper trail. And if the trustee mishandled funds or denied you access, that's actionable. Actionable. That word hit me like caffeine. Could someone, say, a sibling, have committed fraud using that trust info? Absolutely, she said, especially if documents were misused. If someone forged checks using trust assets, that's criminal. She paused. But it's also leverage. Big leverage. I ended that call and immediately went looking for paperwork. I didn't have much, but I had an old shoebox in storage labeled Dad. Inside were cards, photos, and, buried at the bottom, a copy of his memorial service program. Tucked into it, folded into fourths, was a letter from the lawyer who'd handled his estate. On the top corner, Trust ID hashtag 7983 LLC. Below it, trustees, primary, Margaret Avery, spouse, secondary, Carter Avery, upon 25th birthday. I stared at it. My 25th birthday was 4 months away. For months, and I became co-trustee. And that, right there, was the crack I'd been waiting for. The house, the bank account, any remaining investments, if they were tied to that trust, and Josh had used it fraudulently, and Mom had allowed it, then I had more than leverage. I had control. I spent the next week doing what I did best, working quietly in the background while everyone underestimated me. I emailed Danielle again. She agreed to help me file a formal inquiry into the trust. We'd start with a records request. No accusations yet, just paperwork. A legal toe in the door. I researched our family property. Found out Mom had taken out 2 helics on the house, both within the last 5 years. Both tied to the same frozen account she mentioned in her email. I checked Josh's public records. Nothing yet, but the county website showed a pending case number. That meant law enforcement was investigating him. Fraud. Forgery. White collar, but still a felony. And then, when everything was lined up, when I had enough dots to draw a very ugly picture, I made the call. Not to them. To Lexi. She picked up on the second ring. Carter. Hey, I said. A long silence. Then she whispered, I didn't think you'd ever call me again. I'm not calling to fix things, I said. I'm calling to offer you a choice. She listened as I laid it all out. The trust. The pending charges. The financial trail. I told her what would happen if I went public. Not just with the legal filing, but with the family's dirty laundry. But I'm not doing this to hurt you, I said. I just wanted to stop. And you're the only one who might understand that. She was quiet. Then, what do you want me to do? Nothing yet. Just be ready. Because when I pull the pin on this, it's going to blow. And I needed someone on the inside who wouldn't flinch when the dust settled. Someone who, like me, was done pretending everything was fine. When I hung up, I sat back in my chair. The pieces were in place. The truth was locked, loaded, and ready. And if my family thought they could drag me back in just to clean up another mess, they were about to find out what it felt like when the quiet one finally speaks. The day everything finally broke open wasn't dramatic. No storm clouds. No thunderclap. Just a quiet Tuesday morning in June, sunlight spilling across my studio floor while I sat at my desk with a cup of instant coffee. The cheap stuff, the kind I used to guzzle during finals week. But this time, I drank it slowly, calmly, steadily, because I knew what was coming. The trust records request had been processed. Danielle emailed me everything. Balances, transfers, signatures, scanned checks, even timestamps. It was like opening a door into a room I didn't know existed, except everything inside the room had my name on it. Turns out, Dad had set up the trust for both of his kids. Plural, equal shares. And the moment I turned 25, I became co-trustee, but only if the primary trustee, Mom, had acted in good faith. She hadn't. The documents made it clear. Thousands pulled out over the years. Some transfers labeled home improvements, but clearly used for other things. Several checks written to Josh directly, signed sloppily in a shaky imitation of Dad's handwriting. And then the nail in the coffin, a scanned check Josh had written only 4 months earlier. The signature didn't even remotely match Dad's. It looked like he'd scribbled it with his non-dominant hand. In the dark, while sneezing. Fraud. Clear as day. But I didn't file charges immediately. I set the stage. That was always the part they underestimated, the patience. I scheduled a meeting through Danielle's firm. She agreed to host it at her office, acting as a neutral mediator. Mom was told the meeting was about discussing solutions. Josh was told it was about helping his case. Lexi wasn't required to attend, but when she asked if she could, I told her yes. She arrived first. When she walked into the conference room, her shoulders were slumped in a way I'd never seen before. Not dramatic, not defeated, just tired. She sat across from me with a small, sad smile. "You look different," she said. "So do you." "I'm sorry," she whispered. I nodded. "We'll talk after." Then Mom arrived. She hugged Lexi first. She hugged me too, which startled me because I couldn't remember the last time she'd done that. She smelled like laundry detergent and stale anxiety. "You look thin," she murmured. "You should take better care of yourself." I didn't respond. Josh showed up last, wearing cologne strong enough to knock out a small animal. He didn't look scared. He looked annoyed. "Let's get this over with," he muttered. Dropping into his chair like this was some huge inconvenience to him. Danielle began the meeting calmly. Professionally, she explained the purpose: to review the trust status, the investigation, and potential legal outcomes. Mom's fingers tightened around her purse strap. Josh rolled his eyes. I sat back and let the silence guide things. Danielle projected the documents onto the monitor. Line by line, she walked them through the discrepancies. The withdrawals, the forged signatures, the accounts tied to the house. Mom's breathing became shallow. Josh shifted uncomfortably for the first time. Then Danielle clicked to the last page. The trust clause indicating that if the primary trustee breached fiduciary duty, authority transferred immediately to the secondary trustee. Me. Mom's face drained of color. "Carter," she whispered. And that was the moment, the exact moment, the roles shifted. I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I wasn't the dependable child or the emotional punching bag or the convenient solution to everyone's problems. I was the trustee. I was the one holding the pen this time. I folded my hands on the table. "I've reviewed everything," I said calmly. "And I've made my decision." Mom shook her head. "Carter, please, don't do this. Don't humiliate us like this." "You did this," I said quietly. "I just found the paperwork." She winced like I'd struck her. Josh leaned forward. "Okay, so we messed up a little." "A little," I repeated. Danielle pulled up the projected total. $68,413 stolen or misused. $32,000 directly linked to forged checks. $12,000 tied to the frozen account from Josh's credit card stunt. All of it documented. All of it under trust jurisdiction. Josh swallowed hard. Mom whispered, "We were trying to stay afloat. Your father didn't leave us much. We did what we had to do." "No," I said. "You did what was easiest." She covered her face with her hands. Then I turned toward Josh. "You know they can charge you," I said. "Right? Not maybe. Not possibly. They can. And given your track record, you'd probably get the maximum." His voice cracked for the first time. "Carter, come on. We're brothers. Brothers don't forge each other's futures," I said. He went silent. Mom reached across the table. "Please. Whatever you want. We'll make it right. Just tell us what to do." I looked at her hand. Then at her. Then at the life they had built on my silence. And I finally, fully, let go. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. Their heads snapped up. "You're both going to sign the trustee transfer form today. Effective immediately, I take over all decisions regarding the trust." Mom's mouth opened, then closed. She nodded. "You will also sign a repayment agreement," I continued. "Every dollar misused will be repaid into the trust over the next 10 years. Monthly installments. Legally binding." Mom's eyes filled with tears. Josh looked like he wanted to flip the table, but he didn't move. "And if we don't," he muttered. Danielle answered for me. "Then the trust files a civil suit. And the district attorney proceeds with criminal fraud charges." He sank back in his chair. Lexi watched quietly, shoulders shaking a little, but not from fear, from relief. I wasn't done. The house, I said. It's trust property. That means if payments aren't made, I can force a sale. Mom's voice trembled. Carter, that's our home. It was Dad's home, I corrected. And you used it like an ATM until it nearly collapsed. She looked down. And one more thing, I added. They braced. You will stop telling everyone I'm the one who fixes things. I'm done being the family safety net. Silence. Mom nodded first. Hesitantly. Shamefully. Josh, after a long minute, muttered, fine. The documents were signed that day. All of them. Not because they wanted to, but because, for the first time in their lives, they had no leverage over me. And for the first time in my life, I had leverage over them. When the meeting ended, I didn't stay for hugs. I didn't stay for apologies or promises or desperate attempts to pull me back into the cycle. I walked out. Lexi followed me into the hallway. Carter, she said softly. I turned. I meant what I wrote, she said. I don't expect anything. But, thank you. For not letting them swallow me whole too. I studied her face. She looked scared, but she also looked free. You're the only one who tried, I said. That counts. She nodded, eyes wet. I walked her to the elevator. She squeezed my hand before the doors closed. When I stepped outside, the sun felt warm in a way I hadn't felt in years. Real warmth. Not obligation disguised as love. Not pressure disguised as responsibility. Just sunlight. Just air. Just freedom. I didn't look back. I moved forward. I moved on. I took over the trust officially a week later. Sold off a few small assets to stabilize things. Put the house on a structured repayment plan. Set boundaries so thick a bulldozer couldn't push through them. Mom sent a few messages after that. Apologies. Invitations to dinner. Check-ins. I responded politely but distantly. I wasn't cruel, just unavailable. Josh didn't contact me at all. Lexi did, though. Small messages. Updates. Photos of her graduation cap, doodled with planets and tiny stars. A picture of her acceptance letter to a college 3 states away. A simple line under it. Thank you for helping me get out. I replied to those. But the best moment, the moment I didn't even know I'd been waiting for, came on my 25th birthday. A single letter. No return address. Inside, you're the calm in the storm. I knew you'd find your own life someday. I'm proud of you, son. Dad. I don't know when he wrote it. Maybe years before he passed. Maybe meant to be given to me later. Maybe forgotten in a desk drawer until it somehow found its way to the mail. But holding it in my hands, I realized something I'd never fully understood. I hadn't rebuilt myself alone. A part of him had been there the whole time. And now, the storm had finally passed. And for the first time in my entire life, I was standing in the sunlight on purpose.